it also got me thinking about, obviously, as it does, it got me reflecting on a couple of books, and one of them that we used for your interview. The book's called The Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni. And the principle, and I know I'm sort of paraphrasing a little bit, but the principle is that we used to interview with three different people, didn't we? And so I think maybe not on yours, but we took.
Yeah,
remember how we
was
took
you
a
and
vote and you got in?
on mine, and then you took a vote afterwards.
Yeah, and we always laugh about our friend because you got in on a 2-3 majority, didn't you? But the more important thing is the book on Patrick Lencioni. When you're looking for qualities of people, it talks about interviewing on hungry, humble, and smart. And I started using that a lot. So if I wanted to employ somebody in my team, I'd have 3 interviewers, one interviewing on hungry, one interviewing on humble, and one interviewing on smart. And when we came together, if they didn't pass one of those subjects, they didn't get in. Never mind a 2 out of 3. You had to get 3 out of 3 in being hungry, in terms of hungry about work, humble as a person, yeah, and smart about people, understanding, that it's not just about you, it's about the team, it's about. And when you read that book, the interesting thing about it was there was a guy internally and a guy externally. Now, the only reason they got the guy externally, they thought he was a brilliant candidate, but what he did was, when he was waiting for his interview, he was sat in reception, and he was sat in there half an hour waiting. And during that half an hour, he never bothered to find anything out about the receptionist. Never, but she was sat next to him. She was taking calls. He never bothered to find out her name or anything. And actually, what they realised was that, and you could take that plus and minus, but he never bothered his arse to find out anything about her. And she passed that on, and they realised he probably wasn't humble, And what they decided to do was, going back to the Kelsey situation, they had a guy that they've worked with for a few years. They realised they could invest in him further. They knew him. They knew his qualities. They knew he was hungry, humble, and smart, and they employed him instead. They gave him the promotion. And I just thought it's a great example of where, if possible, go internal.
Yeah, there's always been this weird culture of, especially some places I've been, where promoting internally it's almost easier to leave and come back than it is to move up. And that's weird. Yeah. You already know what you've got, what you're getting. You already know what these gaps are, what's missing. So then half of those expectations are already set, and half of the plan is already set. And you know that they're already engaged in the company because they're already here. They've already got a relationship to start. I've never understood why it's that way around. Why it seems easier to bring in a stranger than it is to promote someone internal.
Yeah, what you'd rather do is take 2 A4 sheets of paper that somebody's wrote something on called a CV. You'd rather ask them some questions that they already know the answers to on their own CV, and you'd rather employ somebody from that basis of that 2 sheets of paper, rather than somebody you know internally, inside and out.
Right? Because we all exaggerate on the CV a bit and flesh it out or change the word.
No, Simon, you're being polite. We lie. We lie on those CVs, and you don't tend to get found out. And then what happens? Why do organizations have probationary periods?
Yeah.
Because they know. Mm-hmm. They know that the turnover rate is exceptionally high in the first 3 months. Because the fit is not right. The language they use, the culture they can't fit in, brings me on to one of my phrases that I brought out, and I'm not allowed to finish this phrase off. You're going to have to fit. So when you join a new organisation, you either have to fit in or
something out. Oh, fit or F off.
Fit in or
yes.
Yeah, and so you're joining a culture that you know nothing about, and you that is basically it. You should be looking to fit in or
this is why my interviews were always always included a best fit section. So my questions were, well, I'll just establish that they can do what they said on the CV. If I seen any red flags, I would ask about them.
Yeah.
But then I'd be asking, what were you like on your worst day? Like, do you bring people in, or do you just shut them out? What's your sense of humour? Like, what makes you laugh? I've asked that question. What makes you laugh? Asking about their TV shows. So just figure them out. Do they even have a favourite? I don't even know. I only listen to the radio. You've learned something about them. Oh, they don't. They don't watch telly. What does that tell you? Oh, I like watching. Oh, I'm out all the time. But I don't get to watch much TV because I'm quite often looking after my mum because of this, and this. And those sorts of stuff. You can't just stick to the CV. Stick with the what's this gap about?
No.
And they definitely do. And if you have to, especially in my trade, give them a skills question. Give them a skills portion of the interview where they, write us a bit of code that does this and this. Can they do it? Yes, they can. And the rest of it should be, are they going to mess the team up? Have they got an ego that's going to mess with everyone else? Are they going to disrupt the whole team? And you know what it's like having a disruptor in the team, right? The rest of the team just can't be asked. Then you have people leaving. Stuff doesn't get done. But one person can cause that in a team of 5, 10. I've seen it happen.
I would, even trying interesting things like take them out. Depending on the position, take them out for dinner. Take them out for dinner. Give them a couple of glasses of wine or a couple of pints of beer.
Yeah,
and see how they are.
My last boss, Neil, for his sins, because he was good and bad. But the things that he's very strong on the best fit. And when I first offered Sarah the job, we had a team night out coming up in the next couple of weeks. So he said, well, ask her if she wants to come along. She wasn't going to be starting for another month. Was it another month or another month and a bit? She had to work, I noticed. I think it was going to be... And she had some holidays already booked. So I think it ended up being like 6 weeks or something. And within 2 weeks we had this outing with bowling and daft stuff and food. So when I asked her along, it was great. She turned up, broke the ice immediately with everybody in an atmosphere that wasn't about work. She got to size everyone up. Everyone got to size her up. She loves a bit of competition. Loves her food, so she says, you should try this. I've been here before, etc. It was great. It worked well. Obviously it can be a little bit embarrassing turning up. You don't know anyone. You're going to kind of fit in. She knew me, obviously, because we'd had like a 9-hour interview. But it worked. It partly broke the ice. So why not? Yeah, take them out. Get them in a social situation where you see a bit more of who they are.
Yeah. And I just think it's a great way to sort of see them relax rather than, you imagine you got a table of 6 people interviewing you and you're sat there and asking you those old questions that don't bring any benefit. And they're just equally shitting because they don't know which questions to ask, and blah, blah, blah. And they're playing one-upmanship with the people that are on the board with them interviewing. It just becomes a bit of a joke. But, the other thing I was thinking of was like, if you're growing as an organisation, as some of the ones we've been in, and you're growing it fast, some people are able to adjust to that pace and some people aren't. And the danger then is, and I've seen it a few times, where you become emotionally attached to the people in your organisation, and then you're not. I'm quoting from a book called Good to Great, and face the brutal facts. Get the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and get the people in the right seats on the bus, then drive it forward. And I've seen in several senior positions in organisations where you might know some of them, you know what I'm referencing, that they just wouldn't take those tough decisions to move them on because they weren't in the right place, And you have to. I'm working with a couple of companies now whereby the senior team don't want to do it because they're nice people, and it's wrong for the organisation.
The first thing Neil did when he came in as a contractor, because he was good at planning things. So he came in as a PM. He was organising some of our massive projects.
Yeah.
My boss left, and they offered him the spot. One of the first things he did was he went through the team uh, with a, I can't think of the right analogy, but he basically, well no, he
Fine tooth comb.
basically, he basically got his scythe, right, like the
All right,
Grim
yeah.
Reaper just waltzed in and
He's
went, they're not
Thomas.
fitting in, are they? They're not fitting in. Got rid of 3 or 4, brought 3 or 4 new ones in. We had spots for another couple, and he didn't want to sort those other 2 out until he'd sorted out. So then he just started watching, listening to us as managers, started having individual manager meetings with us, and then had a manager meeting, so him just with the managers of the different departments. And he's like, right, I need you to be brutal. Who are the bellends? Who do you have, the most difficulty with? And he made us have those difficult discussions, and then having performance reviews as you do, or PIPs or PIs or whatever you want to call them, and sort of performance managing these people, and letting them realise that we've noticed that you drink more tea than type keys. You do more drinking than typing,
Yeah.
more talking than typing, more complaining than anything. You never seem to be happy, or you're a disruptive influence. And some of them, I must admit, some of them book their ideas up, and they go, "Oh, right, I can't just sit on my arse now."
Yeah.
Right, and they cracked on, and they turned out into brilliant team members. But there was a few of them. They were, as he called it, managed out. When they realised that for themselves they're not our best fit. We realised they're not. There was at least one of them that had to have that difficult conversation on the, I think it was it the web team, where they were, said that you're not a good fit here anymore, and we'll let go. But he did
As
that.
one of our
The difference it made.
Yeah, one of our illustrious leaders who has unfortunately departed now. He died a few years ago. He used to use the word culling, didn't he?
Yes,
Cull,
yeah, I remember that.
you know, and yeah, and I'll do a
Yeah.
quick story because we sort of need to finish off now. Is that the quick story is one of the most negative experiences I've created in my career in terms of culture was. Within a week or so of starting at that organisation, I was asked to cull 6 to 10 people, and of
Especially as the
course,
new guy.
I fired. Yeah, and I fired 6 to 10 Germans, and guess what walked in the back door? 6 to 10 Englishmen. And so we brought them in, and that just killed the atmosphere, killed the culture, killed trust, and we spent the next couple of years trying to rebuild that through workers'
Yeah, they
councils as we
formed a
called
union,
them
didn't
and
they?
all that sort of stuff. Was successful in the end, but for me to be brave enough to say to the chief at the time and say that's not a wise decision at the time, that would have been the bigger, better thing to do, is to say we ain't doing it yet. But I didn't. I just, I did what he told me to do, and I sort of
Yeah,
regretted it for a couple of years. But that's how you can kill
yeah,
culture for a couple of years.
it wasn't always 100% easy, was it? When we tried to
No,
build
no.
that.
Well, we had, thir- we had 38 nationalities
I mean,
there. How are you going to
it
manage
ended
that?
it ended up
38
great,
nationalities.
right? Because, like you say, with all them nationalities, and we all fit in,
Yeah,
and we all got together in the end. But it knocked you moving forwards always slower than going back, right? So it knocked you back a fair ways, but it meant that you had a fairly steep climb just to get back to where it was. And these things never seem to have hugely
yeah. I've
logical
got a
reasons
book
either,
here.
do they? Right? Just get rid of 6 of them. Before you'd even had the chance to figure out who was who either.
Yeah, The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey. The basic principle is talking about you can spend ages building trust up, but you can kill it very quickly, and it takes a lifetime to build it back up again. I'm not just talking about relationships here. I'm talking about
Yeah.
workplace. And it's so very true that you can make what seems to be a simple decision that can be catastrophic in an organization. Catastrophic. and I paid the price for that. I don't mind it, as you know, we tend not to
Yeah.
mind admitting our
Yeah.
mistakes because it's in the past now.
Yeah,
We've
and
learned
not
from them,
repeated
but
them. We're the
yeah,
kind of people that doesn't.
um,
We don't like to repeat
no,
once
no,
you've learned it.
no, no, because having that conversation now with that senior person, if I was to have it now, you'd be saying, uh, in your memory banks, you're like, oh, that experience took me so long to get over it. Can I would just want 48 hours to sleep on it, think about it, pros and cons, and I'll come back to you. And I know after that 48 hours, we're going through. This is why we shouldn't do that, and this is what we should do as an alternative. Oh, don't pick that one though. You might pick that one from the from
Dickhead.
the caption.
Christ.
Should we? Can we do my test? Because we need to
You've
crack on.
already prepared
Yeah.
some texts, so let's have it. I'll separate this clip out
Well,
as well. I'll post it individually, side by side with the other
yeah,
one, so then people can actually sit and play them.
yeah. So you're right. We've got my initial test, which I read
Mm.
this passage of this book without reading it
Mm.
beforehand. I just went straight in and read it. Now, if you know the background in terms of sort of how I found out late about my dyslexia, I thought about this at length. I had this fear in English in high school. They used to go around the classroom
Mm.
and we used to be reading a book,
Mm-hmm.
and you knew at some point
Mm-hmm.
during that hour
Mm-hmm.
you were going to be chosen to read that book. I would be
Yeah.
sitting there shitting
Yeah.
myself, waiting till the teacher called my name. And then I would basically stutter through two or three lines, not being able to see them. Now, what I worked out on this experience, and maybe I'll fall flat on my arse, it doesn't matter. What I worked out is how I'm focusing my mind really affects how well I would read or not.
Mm.
So what I said to Simon was, I'm going to do this 3 times. Yeah. One, I'm going to read it very, very quickly, as
Mm-hmm.
fast as I can, basically. Yeah. Two, I'm going to read it, but I'm going to try and let my mind
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
fluctuate, move around in my head. And then thirdly, I'm going to focus on the word individually and I'm going to read it. And hopefully we can sort of work out which
Oh,
one is the
so
best
everything
one.
from not thinking about it at
Yeah.
all, right the way to heavily focusing on it. Mm.
Yeah, and I've been practicing this a little bit, and I've worked out, I've worked out what's going on, and I think through this exercise, I've worked out how I could probably read better
Strategy
and
then.
more focused. Just by yeah, you forced me on this exercise to create a strategy. I've tried two or three different variables, and I'm going to
Okay.
basically demonstrate the variables now,
Excited. Let's
and
have it.
and yeah, so. So this one is this is a book, and the to remind you, the poem is called
Yeah.
"Friendship is not a numbers game." Yeah. So I'm just going to read it very, very quickly first. You can have a friend, one single friend, whose support is so fierce, so fabulously fierce, that you feel like there is an army behind you. Likewise, you can have many other friends whose allegiance you are not entirely sure of. You can meet a new friend tomorrow who rocks your life, rose up and says, I'm here for you, and then actually truly are. You can have a friend who you know and loved for years who can show up even for the best of times, never mind the worst of times. If you're really lucky, you can have a few of the former ones, but you really need a friendship that is not numbers game. It's a game of instinct. Trust yours. Now, what I've realised that going through the first one, that's the first one very fast, is I'm really, my
Mm.
mind is all over the place. And some of the lines I've probably started off well, but halfway through the script,
Yeah. Yeah.
my mind's moving off, and I struggle getting it back. Now, the second one, this I'm going to read it this time, and I'm going to allow my mind to fluctuate. Yeah, but I'm going to do it in a slower, methodical, more way. You can have a friend, one single friend, whose support is so fierce, so fabulously fierce, that you feel like there is an army behind you. Likewise, you can have many other friends whose allegiance you are not entirely. You can meet a new friend tomorrow who rocks in your life, roars up and says, I'm here for you. And you truly are. You can have friends you've known, loved for years, who can show up even for the best of times, never mind the worst. If you're really lucky, you can have a few of the former, but one is all you really need. Friendship is not a numbers game. It's a game of instinct. Trust yours. Now that one, I'm letting my mind float around a little bit, and so you can sort of hear in the sort of transcript there that I stutter a little bit. Some of the words maybe I miss, and it's not
you're
fluent.
Interrupted a bit in between.
This time, yeah, and it's just it's probably I'm realizing a lot more from doing this about my mind and about how my mind works, in terms of where it wants to be, reading or distractions that are coming in and out of my head and flowing through. So this time I'm going to focus on the single word, and try and get through the passage just focusing on a single word at a time without any distractions. Yeah. You can have a friend, one single friend, whose support is so fierce, so fabulously fierce, that you feel like there is an army behind you. Likewise, you can have many other friends whose allegiance you are not entirely sure of. You can meet a new friend tomorrow who rocks in your life, rolls up and says, "I'm here for you." And they actually truly are. Yet you can have friends you've known all your and loved for your years. You can show up even for the best of times. Never mind the worst. If you're really lucky, you can have a few of the former, but one is all you really need. Friendship is not a numbers game. It's a game of instinct. Trust yours. Now, even doing it the slower time that time, I know my mind is wandering about 2/3 of the way through, and I was struggling to pull it back. But the beginning of it, I was really focused on a single word. Now, it needs a bit of work. Obviously, we've only been doing it for a couple of weeks, and I've just been playing on that. But if I was to read out, if I had an audience and I was to read, I would really be homing in the technique of reading those single words and getting the emphasis on it. It's not the finished article, but you can sort of see on the 3 examples whereby
It was much different. That was more like you were reading it to someone rather than reading it to get it done. I could hear you were just starting to get some differences in intonation to focus and deliver certain words slightly differently to create a cadence as you were reading. So I can almost see you reading something in an engaging way for the listener rather than just reading to read something out. It sounded, that's the closest I've heard you read something like a poem. Like your tone of voice, you were starting to bring that in, then you got interrupted somewhere in the middle. Or middle 2/3.
Yeah, what I sort of realised there is that I'd probably never get over the fear of having to read a script without looking at it first, which is never really going to happen much in my life now. Those occasions at school, and that's another thing. My belief system through those bad experiences has said you can't read that way. But what we've proved at 55 is you can create a different strategy to remove that belief that you had from when you were 10 and 11 years old and try to replace it with a different strategy.
Yes.
That's what we learned,
Actually,
didn't we?
There's more than one way to read a book. And there's actually, if you understand the pathways of things and where they're going, you can say, well, I can make that work.
Who's that Chinese guy from America that does the speed reading? There's it. And I remember reading up on him, and what he was basically saying is that we try to go across the page from left to right, and following it. And he says, just keep your eye in the middle, keep your focus in the middle, because actually your peripheral vision will pick up the 2 words at the end of the line and the 2 words at the other end of the line. So therefore, you only have to focus on the middle. And if you've ever read a script where they've missed certain words out, you still get the meaning to it.
This is the thing when I was
you?
teaching myself to speed read, and I got a little bit, and there's a few exercises you can do with your eyes and making certain different connections in your brain, and some exercises you can go through. And for some reason, I keep going to it and then going, because it's not my favourite thing, right? I still have these OCD difficulties with it. I'm going to fix it, don't get me wrong. But I'm not going to hammer myself at it. But there was a few tips. One was your joining words. You don't need to read those. You know those exercises where people say, "Oh, how many spelling mistakes are in this sentence?" And they put it deliberately on those words that our brain
Yeah.
quite often ignores because it fills in the gap, right? Because it is just a joining word to fill things in. And it's only people who are detail obsessed, like like me, like you, would read it and go, "You've put two T's in that. That H is backwards." Summit, then you go, "Oh well, you've."
Yeah.
Them tests on Facebook. You've got a high IQ if you can do this test and find the day. How many mistakes are in it? And you go, "Oh, shut up. Shut your face." But there's that. But there's also one method from one guy was saying, well, it's much like when you're reading a road sign. You're driving so fast you can't actually read it. But what you see is the word as a picture. So you'll see the word Birmingham. And they've chosen the font size, the colour of the signs, where they are on the road. All of this is all very deliberate. So as you go past, you see a picture on the sign and know that picture, without those shapes on it, is the shape of Birmingham or the word Birmingham. So you don't actually go BIR, you don't read the word Birmingham, you just look at the picture. And this is what a lot of speed readers do. They acknowledge that that's what that word looks like. And as they're reading, they're not actually reading it. They're scanning the page and taking the concept that's attached to that picture of that word. So they're not reading it, and they will skim, and I can't make myself do it. I will, but at the moment, it's a fight between that and OCD. I don't like losing fights, so I'm going to win it at some point. But I have to read every single word, and sometimes I'll make myself read it more than once, restart the sentence, the paragraph, the page. It's irritating, so quite often I just don't read because it's too much of a fight. But they say, yeah, well, you can't expect also as a speed reader to have 100% retention. So when you get these editors who are getting like hundreds of books, people submitting books to them all the time, and they've got these researchers that need to read through all this material, and they've only got a few days to do it in, or they're researching on a topic. They don't read every single word of every page. They've learned how to scan. I don't need to read words of a certain length because I still get the context of what's going on. I don't need to read the page grammatically correct. I just need to get the concept of what's being spoken about and a rough idea of how it's written to get the style. But they say, oh yeah, just skip those words. You don't need them. My retention, I can read it. If you see some of these competitions, they'll say, I can read it this many words per minute with 90% retention or 90% comprehension. So there's a bit of a battle on with some of these people who are in these sorts of competitions as well. I can read a page this fast, and I admit I only get 90% of it. But part of that 90%, part of that last 10% are words I don't need, and the rest, if I scanned it again, I'd pick it up and realise what I missed. But I got enough of it to know whether it was a good story or not. And here's me obsessing over the detail, and everyone else is going, no, the trick is don't. All right, yeah. Because you're right, your brain fills in them extra bits, and I've seen that technique as well. Just sit down the middle, and you'll pick it up on the periphery. Just scan the page downwards. But in school, though, you learn to read bit by bit, and they tell you to say it out loud in your head. And it is really difficult to unprogram that, to deprogram that. You know, that internal voice you have in your head as you're reading out the words, and you'll actually speak them, you'll say them in your head. To read fast, you have to get rid of that. Because you can only speak so fast, and you will mimic the way you speak. So to read properly fast, you have to bin that and be able to scan the page without saying the words out loud. Yeah.
I was trying to look up what the guy was called, but I can't remember. But
that was good. 3 different techniques with three noticeably different results.
Yeah, it sort of blew away some of my misconceptions about my abilities. And as I'm reading at the moment, I've had a good chat to my chimp, and my human is putting some new data into my computer. That's to come.
It sounds like, even though it's been 2 weeks, you've had a realisation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Without those little challenges we give each other, where would we be? And I'm going to say this. Somebody said this. I'm not worse off for that experience.
That is true. And along the way, we're actually learning something about the function of dyslexia as well. Certainly yours, and the way that it plays around inside your head and has other effects. And I think once you've had your ADHD consultation, you may find there's an interplay of that's pulling your attention away from reading the page properly. You're wanting to be distracted, and sometimes you'll go down a rabbit hole or not. There's nothing in between. So you may gain some additional data from that. And then by the time we get to sort of middle of the year into June, you're able to fluently read because you've got all these skills. And then we can pass that out to the people who are listening and say, look, this is the strategy we came up with. There may be some tweaks for you, but this is a good general strategy, and we can offer that out as some course material to help people out. Be great. Yeah, great.
Another course.
That sounds awesome. I'm pleased with that. Yeah.
Oh, good.
We don't have any guests until what? I know Anne wants to come back, but then it's probably going to be next month. Live though, we've got a live coming up. I might do another live Facebook practice, although that seems fairly easy to configure. I was quite pleased at how simple that was. So we might do a double stream, Facebook and YouTube live at the same time, and give that a go. And maybe it's a bit later, so we can fit in some more time zones. I think my test was at 7 o'clock or something. I think was it 7? I know it was 9. By the time I got past procrastinating and installing things, I'll just. But next week we'll keep it secret as we usually do, because we've got a few that we still want to get through. Some favourite topics. I can't remember how many's left. There's loads. And until then, though, do your clicks on the follow, like, subscribe. Drop some more comments. We've been loving some of the comments we've had lately, especially on the Hacky Travels. And the comments on Facebook, where I've actually had some feedback on YouTube, believe it or not, and made some corrections. So, until then, thanks for listening. Take care.